My name's Ceryl, and the original photograph is of me and my son Macsen, and it's in a place in Pembrokeshire called Lawrenny Bay, which is the most amazing place and not many people know about it. But I grew up not far from here for a few years. We lived in West Wales, and I went to school the other side of the river, and we just came exploring one day and found this little quayside tea room that does the most amazing cheesecakes and jugs of Pimm's if you fancy it. And it was great for us because we had 3 kids in very quick succession, which meant that we can sit on the side and have a sandwich, and the kids can play on the beach and go a bit feral, which is what holidays in Pembrokeshire should be about, really. The photograph was obviously my husband Paul just saying, "Give your mum a cuddle," and that was it. And then because we'd taken that one and I loved the photo, we recreated it probably about a year, 18 months later, where he's a little bit more reluctant and a little bit bigger, but still very warm, cuddly little boy. Max had bright orange hair, and orange is a very significant thing for us, and I think we picked up on it a lot. I'm not a spiritual person or a religious person or in any way, shape or form, but it's something that we can still connect with, and particularly with the children as well. So even now we'll still buy orange flowers for the house, and anyone that knows me really well will buy me little things in orange, but it's kind of not necessarily spoken about very much. It's just a quiet acknowledgement, if you like, that he's around. This year's been really hard, I think, because all his peer group, you know, they're all doing the GCSEs and learning to drive and all those milestones that he didn't get to. So whereas previously it has brought comfort, I think this year it's made it quite difficult as well. I don't know, grief is kind of, you know, you think you're dealing with something, and I don't quite know what I was expecting, but I think I kept going so long, you know, the household to keep going. I think I kept going and kept going and kept going, and then it all kind of came to a head a little bit this year, and I stopped coping with everything quite so well. So this year, even 5 years on, it's hit me worse than it ever has, I think, because I put it in a box for such a long time and kept a lid on it. It was triggered this year and the lid came off. I've been speaking to a psychologist who's kind of made sense of it all and made me see that even 5 years down the line, it really doesn't matter, because there's no formula to it. So and I suppose it'll just always come and go. But I think she's taught me coping strategies to kind of live with the loss, because I wasn't coping with having to live with it. Because, and I think as well, it's with losing a child, it's not the norm. And I don't know whether, I haven't lost a parent, so I've got no frame of reference there, but there's an element that it's almost the right way round, even if, because my husband Paul lost his dad quite young, but at the same time there's still kind of an element, well, it's you know, the parent should go before the child, and it's also quite lonely because not many people have experienced it, so you find it quite difficult. Even though people want to sympathise, they can't actually empathise because they don't even want to think about that, because that's just the worst thing in the world for most people. So as well-meaning as people are, they don't want to be in your shoes either. Most people probably don't even want to think how much it would hurt. It's been very difficult as a family, actually, even more so. So as a family, I think his loss has become a chasm that none of us are reaching across. You know, Max was the first grandchild on either side, and so they lost a grandchild. My brother lost his nephew, and so even though I've lost my child, everybody is grieving for their own loss, and quite rightly or wrongly, I don't know, but I don't know whether I should even expect an acknowledgement. That I want people to think I feel worse, but is that wrong? I don't know. I don't think I'm ever supposed to get over it. I wouldn't want to. I think that's the wrong word. I needed help to live with it. Like I said previously, he was the first grandchild on both sides and the oldest of 3 children. Even between my oldest and youngest child, there's only 3.5 years. And he took being a big brother really well. There were never any jealousies, or, you know, they really were a proper little gang of 3, and they all got on extremely well. But he had quite an old head on his shoulders. He was extremely thoughtful and very kind, and don't get me wrong, he could be a whining little tosser. However, because he was still a child, obviously, but he was really kind and really thoughtful, and he had a brilliant sense of humour. He got sarcasm at about 18 months old. He was really funny, and he was also quite a geek. So even now I'm finding tins about the place where he would have collected, I don't know, shiny looking stones. He loved anything shiny, so shells on the beach, shiny stones. He just had little collections of things everywhere. So he had a bit of a hobby. He liked collecting mineral stones and quartz and things like that, and then the next thing, he'd be fascinated by astronomy, so he had a telescope and he needed to know everything about that. He also loved nature and things, so him and my dad had a very close relationship because they'd go off walking together. He loved history and things like Time Team. You know, even when he was 6 and 7, he'd watch Time Team. But he wasn't, you know, a geek in the sense that he didn't have friends or he wasn't popular, or just, he was very comfortable in his own skin. He knew what he liked. And he had friends who were also really interested in what he was interested in. And so he was happy with that. And he never wanted or ever tried to be popular exactly. He was happy with his lot, I think. Genuinely, he was quite content. And as it turned out, you know, when he, all through his diagnosis of leukemia, and his bone marrow transplant, and we and the doctors asked a lot of him, and he was really actually uncomplaining and stoic. Really, that's just very stoic. I don't want to be selfish about it, because now all of a sudden I've decided now is the time is right and what have you, but it's been 5 years, and so to avoid it altogether in that time, I can't let it go on much longer, actually, because none of us know if we're going to be here tomorrow. You can't rely on it. And I want the memories of him, and I want him to be talked about. And as hard as it may be, we all miss that person. So I don't understand why we haven't talked about it for all this time. If we're all sad because of that one space, it's not fair for him and his memory that we've made such a ravine of it. So yeah, the book, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, but it talks about grief as being this gaping hole that initially you keep falling into, but over time, even though the hole's not there, you're not filling it up, you're not paving over it, but you do learn to walk around it. And I've remembered that, even though at the time I was probably in the hole, thinking I'm never going to get out of this. But this year I had to ask for help to get out, and it has made a difference. And I think people don't talk about death. People talk even less about death of a child. But it's so important. I'm not going to think for a minute that I won't fall back in, but I feel I won't fall in as far, because hopefully I'll be able to stop myself on the way down. That it has been a bit of a milestone year for all sorts of reasons. It's funny, I am going to get upset saying this. My brother, not long after we lost him, and again, my brother is not religious or spiritual or, any of those things, but Max was such a different child. He said, I do feel like he was an angel, and that we were only supposed to have him for a short time, which is, it's a nice way to look at it, I guess. He's buried in a natural burial ground. We went back there. It would have been 5 years ago on Tuesday that we lost him. And it's just a beautiful place, and it's on a hillside above Cardiff. And when I first had Max, we lived in my parents' house just outside Cardiff, and you can almost see the house. And you can see, on a good day, practically out to sea. And that's important, that it's somewhere that the kids can go and be. We haven't quite got to the point where we go regularly, or I did think at some point we have a picnic there or something, but one day